From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
I'm Tara Mergener, and this is EWTN News Nightly. We begin our program this evening on the Feast of St. Monica with heavy hearts. This morning, a shooter approached the outside of Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis and opened fire through the windows. Inside, children and worshipers were celebrating Mass during the first week of school. The Minneapolis police chief detailed what happened next.
Two were young children, ages 8 and 10, that were sitting in the pews at Mass when they were shot and killed. They were pronounced deceased on the scene. There were another 14 children between the ages of 6 and 15 that were injured by gunfire. There were also 3 adults in their 80s that were parishioners here attending Mass that were also shot in this incident. The families of all of the children that have been affected have been notified. The coward that shot these victims took his own life in the rear of the church.
The police chief added that the gunman had timed a manifesto to be released on YouTube that included disturbing writings. It has been taken down. In addition, the FBI says it is investigating the shooting as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics. On social media, FBI Director Kash Patel also says the shooter has been identified as Robin Westman, a male born as Robert Westman. Patel adds the FBI will continue to provide updates on our ongoing investigation with the public as we are able. And another disturbing detail, police say the gunman blocked at least 2 of the doors to the church with pieces of wood as the news of the shooting spread. Parents rushed to the school to find their children, many visibly relieved to be reunited, hugging family members tightly. One 10-year-old told reporters that he and his classmates hid under the pews when the shooting happened, adding that police arrived very quickly. Archbishop Bernard Hebda of the Archdiocese of St. Paul in Minneapolis spoke at a news conference reminding us to be men and women of hope.
We have to recognize that it's through prayer and through that prayer of the feet, through that action, that we can indeed make a difference. That has to be the source of our hope.
Pope Leo XIV is also expressing sadness over the tragedy at Annunciation School. In a telegram to Archbishop Hebda, the Holy Father sends his heartfelt condolences and the assurance of spiritual closeness to all those affected by this terrible tragedy, especially the families now grieving the loss of a child. While commending the souls of the deceased children to the love of Almighty God, His Holiness prays for the wounded as well as the first responders, medical personnel, and clergy who are caring for them and their loved ones. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops also calling for prayers for the victims tonight. Conference Vice President Archbishop William Lori of Baltimore says, in part, quote, "As a church, we are following the tragic news from Annunciation School in Minneapolis with heartbreaking sadness. Whenever one part of the body of Christ is wounded, we feel the pain as if it were our very own children. Let us all beg the Lord for the protection and healing of the entire Annunciation family." Minnesota Governor Tim Walz spoke to reporters, calling the shooting an unthinkable tragedy.
A community behind us, Annunciation Church and School, committed to academics, service, and Catholic values, filled with the first days of school, of beautiful children going to learn those values, share with their teachers and their classmates. And instead of that joy and that curiosity and that learning, they were met with evil and horror and death.
In a proclamation released by the White House, President Donald Trump is ordering all American flags on public buildings to be flown at half-staff until sunset on Sunday in honor of the victims of Wednesday's mass shooting in Minnesota. Jeff Cavins, the creator of the Great Adventure Bible Timeline, lives just a few miles from the church where the shooting took place. You grew up in this archdiocese and actually went to this school. You have been able to talk to family members of faculty at the school. What have they told you?
Well, I've had the privilege of going to Annunciation as a young man growing up, and the pastor there has been my pastor for the last 8 years, Father Zarin. He has just an amazing man, and what a shepherd he is. One of the best homilists, and he's got such a heart for the people. And I'm also have a long relationship with some of the people that work there at the school. And so, when something like this happens, you can look on the news and say, well, there's another news story, how tragic. But then suddenly when it's in your backyard, you realize how quickly, we're family. We realize we are family, we are connected, and your emotions are gripped because this has happened now to you and to the people that you've been with for a long time. And so, in hearing the testimonies, and they're going to come out in the future, there was literally heroes in that mass that was going on at that time. There were young teachers who put their life in harm's way to protect students, and older students protecting younger students. This is who we are. This is the love of Christ in action. And I do believe that in some way and somehow there's going to be good that comes out of this. And that's the way the Lord, always works. And in a strange way, we are called to pick up our cross, but there are crosses that people pick up that are unimaginable. And we don't have the words that are going to just turn it around and comfort people, but we can be with them and love them, and we can be a part of carrying the cross with them. And I think what we're seeing and what you're reporting is the whole world is doing this right now. There is solidarity. We are a family. So Minneapolis is in mourning right now, and we will get through it. But as Archbishop Hebda says, only with hope. And hope is always attached to faithfulness, the faithfulness of God and the charity of God. It's not just hope in thin air, but it's hope that is based on the faithfulness of God.
Certainly. Obviously there's been a lot of talk about prayer today. I want you to listen to a soundbite from the Minneapolis mayor.
Don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church.
All right, shouldn't we always be praying? I'd like to hear your thoughts on these comments.
Yep. No, I think it's true in that we should always be praying, and we should always be walking in faith. And when we walk in faith, it's not just a believism, but faith is made up of two things. One is a mental assent to something that we believe, but then the second part of it is a personal entrusting of ourselves. And that is, we, as the mayor said, we're going to put steps to what we believe. Another couple of things that were very interesting about this story that I know because I've talked to people that were involved there today is that the shooting began at the responsorial psalm. And the responsorial psalm was, "You have searched me and you know me, Lord." And the guns began to shoot at that point. And that was a very, very powerful moment. And this was only the second day of school for these youngsters. You know what the theme was for this year after the staff prayed about it? It was from Jeremiah, and I'm reading it to you here. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not evil, to give you a future and a hope."
Jeff Cavins, thank you.
That was the theme.
Our condolences go out to everyone there, and we know you're on the ground. God bless you.
Thank you.
All right, we will be right back with more from EWTN News Nightly. In other news tonight, the White House puts pressure on India to cut ties with Russia over the war in Ukraine. New tariffs kicked in today on a range of products from India. Manufacturers say it is American consumers who will pay the price.
This is absolutely a shock.
From footwear to furniture, companies in India mass-produce products to ship to the U.S. Now the trade faces a big burden.
They have to understand nobody is going to surrender in any blackmailing.
The Trump administration implemented its plan to impose 25% tariffs on Indian goods and 25% more due to India's purchase of Russian oil.
I think that it is a complicated relationship, that integrated some with the problems that we're trying to put extra pressure on Russia so that we could get a peace deal to save millions of lives, and the Indian intransigence about opening their markets to our products.
India estimates the tariffs will impact more than $48 billion worth of exports.
I think that when you're looking at trade negotiations, one thing I think we've all learned is that you need to keep your eyes on the horizon and recognize that there are going to be ebbs and flows in things before we reach the final position. And if the Indians don't budge, I don't think President Trump will either.
The new duties could slow economic growth. One factory owner calls it worse than COVID.
There will be job losses. And it's very painful that, these are people who hardly make $300 a month.
President Donald Trump wants to bring manufacturing back to the United States. The secondary tariffs on India discourage the U.S. ally from funneling money into Russia's war machine. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has vowed not to yield to the pressure. And from our return to Catherine Hatta, Senior Associate with the Chair on India and Emerging Asia Economics at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Catherine, thanks for joining us. As we mentioned, manufacturers say it's consumers who are going to pay the price for these tariffs. Do you agree?
Well, yes, I do to some extent. I mean, we're talking about items on India's point of view, things like jewelry, clothing, where we have probably other sources for those products. I don't think pharmaceuticals, which would have been a bigger hit for American consumers, I don't think those are included right now on the list of tariffed items. So I think, yes, there will be some effect, but I wouldn't say it would be a major effect in the short run anyway.
By looking at all the news and the data, how soon do you think we're going to see prices rise?
Well, I think overall prices are going to rise because it's not just India, right? It's Vietnam, it's Bangladesh, it's other sources of tariffs. I think India's problem is because their rate is so much higher than the tariffs that are being put on those countries. Now they're really facing, stiffer competition from those countries to the United States. So we will have something of a price rise, but not a 50% price rise from those products.
How is India responding? We saw a recent pledge from Prime Minister Narendra Modi to lower taxes in India to offset the impact of these tariffs.
Well, I think I have no doubt they will do that. Of course, it will be an impact to them, especially for the kind of small-scale manufacturers on things like, jewelry and textiles, where this might really hurt. So they have a number of things they could do in response, though. They could definitely provide some kind of subsidies to people who are affected by this. They have quite a strong social safety net and an ability through a digital means to get assistance to people fairly quickly. There's no doubt that India is trying to help manufacturers diversify where they can export to. So you have a UK free trade agreement, for example. There's very much activity to try and get an agreement with the EU. But I think the biggest thing that the Indians could do is probably something that we've wanted them to do anyway, which is to open up their economy a little more and reform, certain sectors just to be more economically efficient. So that's definitely also something they can do. So up until now, their growth has been really good. And I've read estimates that even this is only going to shave off maybe 1 percentage point of, a 6% GDP growth, which is not insignificant, but not a disaster for
Interesting.
India.
A lot of moving parts. Do you know how often the U.S. has used tariffs against India or other countries in that part of the world?
Well, I actually am a former diplomat, and I was working in a city called Hyderabad between 2016 and 19. And I know we had put some tariffs on steel and aluminum at that time. So certain sectors, but nothing like this. I don't think any administration has put on tariffs like this the way this administration has. All
right, we'll be keeping an eye on everything and all these moving parts. Catherine Hatta from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. We really do appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right. Now to the Middle East. The United States is set to host talks on the future of Gaza. The discussions come as the Israeli military says a new offensive on Gaza City is, quote, inevitable. The IDF is calling for an evacuation of the area and no signs of a ceasefire are in sight. The saga continues also in Texas over Republicans planning to change the congressional district maps. Now the NAACP is suing to block it. The organization argues the maps discriminate on racial grounds. Last week, Texas Republicans passed a plan to redraw the state's congressional lines in an effort to help the GOP gain as many as 5 House seats in the 2026 midterms. The NAACP amended litigation it brought against Texas congressional maps drawn in 2021. At the time, the group also argued those maps were racially discriminatory. A projected major victory for Democrats in Iowa. State Democrat Caitlin Dray is expected to win in a special election for state Senate. Now, the victory is meaningful because it flips a seat that breaks a Republican supermajority in that state. And that means Democrats will be able to block the governor's nominations that require 2/3 votes. Those include cabinet appointments, the Board of Medicine, and Board of Regents. Now, President Trump won the state by 13% in 2024. State Republicans are blaming it on low voter turnout. In less than 24 hours, Florida is scheduled to execute a man who has spent 33 years on death row. Curtis Wyndham is convicted of killing 3 people and shooting a 4th back in 1992. The Florida Supreme Court acknowledges Wyndham's attorney withheld evidence of mental illness and brain damage. He was sentenced to death by an 8-4 jury vote. That's far from the unanimous standard now expected in many states. His daughter, who was an infant at the time of the crime, is now pleading for clemency. Deacon George Kane of the Diocese of Bridgeport, Connecticut, is among those standing up against the practice of capital punishment. He's working to halt Wyndham's execution. Deacon Kane, thanks for joining us. How and why did you become so involved in this case, and why is it so troubling for you?
Well, I have to be perfectly honest with you. For many years in my law enforcement career, I supported capital punishment. I thought it was a good thing to have. I thought it kept me as a law enforcement officer safe. And as I began to continue to teach at Western Connecticut State University, I did more research on the topic and found out that the death penalty does nothing to help anyone. In fact, it actually causes more harm and more injury to everyone even remotely involved in the case. And we're certainly seeing that here in this case with the victims of the Curtis Wyndham case, because the victim is his daughter, and she is pleading for clemency. She wants to have a relationship with her father, and her grandchildren want to have a relationship with her father. So it begs the question, if we're really interested in achieving justice for victims, because that's what many people say, we have to have the death penalty for the victims to make them whole. And in this case, the victims are saying that they don't want the death penalty. So why are we doing this, and who are we doing this for?
Yeah, and you mentioned Wyndham's daughter. She lost her mother in that tragedy and is now asking the state to spare her life. How unusual is this in your experience, and has it had any impact so far in their decision?
The fact that the victim has stepped up and said that they don't want the death penalty? Well, again, I think it's ironic that at the trial and actually from the point of arrest, victims' family members are promised closure. They're promised that they'll feel better when the death penalty is carried out. And here's a case where the victims are saying, please don't do this for me. This is doing nothing for me. It's actually exacerbating my pain. It's re-traumatizing me, and it's causing our family even more harm. So again, it begs the question, why are we doing this?
Yeah, it does beg the question. Now, Florida's governor, who, by the way, identifies as a pro-life Catholic, how do you reconcile that with the state leading the country in executions this year?
Well, it certainly is both a moral, ethical, and spiritual question. And I'm not going to judge Governor DeSantis, but it's very clear that the Catholic Church has changed its perception and perspective on the use of the death penalty. Pope Francis in 2017 came out clearly changing the catechism of the church, which is the doctrine of our church, saying that the death penalty is inadmissible, which means that there's no use for it in modern day society. See, the Catholic Church tolerated capital punishment historically because it was the only way to contain an unjust aggressor. But in today's day and age, with modern penal facilities, we don't have to worry about someone who has killing again. They can be put in prison. They can be safely contained in prison. So I think that might be part of the reason why Pope Francis changed the catechism. I also think he realized that as we look at the research that's been done on capital punishment and the fact that it serves no moral purpose and does not reduce crime, there's really no justification for it. So I think that's part of the reason why the church changed their position.
All right, Deacon George Kane, thanks. We'll be watching as this all plays out. Appreciate your insight.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, the House Oversight Committee has launched an investigation into whether Washington, D.C. police manipulated its crime statistics. The committee's chairman, Congressman James Comer, claims a whistleblower alleges D.C. crime data may have been manipulated under department leadership, possibly to downplay violent crime. One police commander was placed on leave earlier this year over accusations of downgrading offenses. The probe comes alongside a Justice Department investigation into similar claims. Mayor Muriel Bowser and police officials say crime has dropped in recent years, but President Trump has painted a much different story and is using those concerns to bring in federal law enforcement and the National Guard. The Oversight Committee is now asking for documents, records, and interviews with all 7 district commanders. Up next on EWTN News Nightly, inspiration to Pope Leo. A closer look at the 4th century saint who is close to the Holy Father's heart. Plus, the Holy Father has words on the power of Christian hope. As we mentioned earlier, today is the feast of Saint Monica. She is a source of faith and inspiration for many, including Pope Leo. EWTN Vatican News correspondent Valentina Di Donato tells us more about a small chapel near the Vatican dedicated to her and dear to our Holy Father.
Among the many chapels and churches in Rome, the Chapel of Saint Monica stands out for being a big part of Pope Leo XIV's life and journey to the papacy. Adjacent to the chapel is the Augustinian Curia, where the young Robert Prevost lived and studied when he was still just a student. The chapel is also the place where he was ordained a priest in 1982. When Pope Francis elevated Prevost to cardinal in 2023, he was assigned the chapel as his titular church. Father Angelo Di Berardino was here for it all.
When the young Prevost came here, Robert Prevost, I was living here. He was not yet priest, he was a student here. But living here, we lived together for a few years. But he graduated canon law in Pontifical University, St. Thomas. And then went back to the United States, then went back to Peru. Anytime he came back, he was here.
Father Di Berardino explains how the order found its way to this chapel.
At the end of 9th century, the Augustinians moved from the Church of St. Augustine in Rome, where is the body of Monica. They came here, bought a small building. This house became international residence for Augustinians.
The chapel itself was subsequently built in 1941. Even before elected, Pope Leo had a special connection not only to this chapel, but to the saint the chapel is named after, and whose relics are part of his pictorial cross. Saint Monica, the mother of Saint Augustine, is the epitome of hope and resilience, an example of how the prayers and faith of others can help people arrive on the path God calls them to walk on.
Saint Monica, was a great woman who stands out today for us as a model of motherhood, as a model of women who are struggling in their marital home, either with their husbands or with their children, because Saint Monica did not have it easy with her husband Patrick, the father of her son Saint Augustine. She tried to win him through her love, through her patience, her endurance, her tolerance, and above all, bringing her husband to God in prayer.
Nigerian priest Father Edward Deleng lived here for 6 years as a student while Cardinal Prevost was his superior. He shares his gratitude for the fervent faith of Saint Monica, who not only devoted her life to the conversion of her son, allowing him to become one of the Church's most important saints, but also for her accompaniment along Pope Leo's path to the papacy.
He said it even the day he came out. He said, I'm an Augustinian son of St. Augustine. So there is nothing much more wonderful than this. The order, we are grateful that the order, through the spirituality of St. Augustine, has generated a son and has given a son to the Church.
In Rome, Valentina Di Donato for EWTN News Nightly.
And finally tonight, Pope Leo reminds the faithful that we find true hope when we give of ourselves freely and with love, and we should encounter suffering head-on rather than running from it.
Manifestare la luce dell'amore più grande.
In his Wednesday address to pilgrims, the Holy Father says the example of Christ is a reminder that in moments of fear, injustice, and loneliness, God is always present. Pope Leo added that even in the darkest hour, one can remain free to love until the end. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tara Mergener. Please join us in praying for those impacted by the tragedy at the Catholic grade school in Minneapolis. Good night, and God bless you.